Hey guys, just a quick note at the top of the video. I have commissions open! Check out the link in the description or send me an email at magicalgirlartist@gmail.com for more info. Okay, on with the show. Bye! Hello and welcome back to Art Experiment, the series where I actually use the art supplies I've been hoarding instead of letting them gather dust. Today I'm playing with my Posca paint pens. I've had these for a bit less time than I've had some of my other materials. I've been collecting Tombow markers for longer than Posca pens, for example, but I've still had them for a while now. I got a bunch of Michael's gift cards and some coupons a while back, went into a fugue state, and came out the other side with 2 sets of the damn things. That's the power of gift cards and coupons, baby, that's how they get ya. I got the 16 color set in both 1M or 0.7mm and 5M or 1.8 to 2.5mm sizes. That gives me a good variety of color variation and enough to do both tiny detail work and big swaths of color. I also, at one point, went into a locally owned craft store and found that they had some glitter Posca, so I got a couple 3M or 0.9 to 1.3mm size of those. Because I have no self-control. Paint pens are something I've been interested in trying out for a long time now, which is why I picked them up on a whim like that. I love the bright, bold colors and how solid they look. I mentioned in my Tombow video that one of my main problems with coloring with markers is that I don't like the streaky look, but I can't figure out how not to do that. I like a solid, consistent color across the board, and paint pens seemed like they'd give me that better than markers could. I also wanted to try out some different materials to use the pens on. Everything I've seen about Posca and paint pens in general say that because they're paint, they wrinkle the paper quite often, especially if it's thin or not made for wet mediums. Apparently pilling is also common, especially on stuff that isn't made for paint. I have a bunch of random materials sitting around not doing much, so I figured I'd give them a shot. I used my normal basic dollar store sketchbook, this little square sketchbook my roommate gave me once and I've never used, some watercolor paper left over from the Tombow video, and my black paper sketchbook that I got for an online art class I took once, and then only used once to test some pastels that I also bought for the art class, and that I also never used after that. I also found these little canvas boards in with my supplies, and decided to try one of those since I forget why I bought them in the first place. Alright, without further ado, let's get started. The first thing I did was mess around in my basic dollar store sketchbook. I'd already sketched out this doodle of Motoro based on the Motonui Online Game 2 art style, and figured that the limited palette I was working with would lend itself well to that. I probably should have picked a character who wasn't so white, though. Drawing with white paint on white paper makes it really hard to see what the hell you're doing. I also definitely should have started with something a little simpler that I already know how to draw, because I love Bionicle a lot, but I do not know how to draw robots. As you can see, I started out by erasing the sketch with a kneaded eraser so the lines were only partially visible, just like I did with the Tombow markers. I figured this would make it easier to cover the sketch, since I drew it on a bit heavier than I usually do when I'm coloring right over it. Then I activated the pens by shaking them to mix the paint, and pressing them on a separate paper several times to get the paint into the nib. After that was done, I drew the outlines with the 1M and filled in with either 1M or 5M as necessary. I started putting in details with the 1M ahead of time, but in the end it turned out that the best way to do that was to wait for the paint to fully dry, then add those details on top. Posca paint is opaque, so adding details on top after is easy even with thin pens, and usually, at least in my experience, it only takes 1 coat. Most of the rest of it took multiple coats to get the opaque look I wanted, but not usually more than 2. Light colors especially needed a few coats, something I would find consistently through the rest of the pictures too. You have to wait for 1 coat to dry before adding the next, and if you don't wait for the paint to dry fully before putting more colors next to or on top of it, they'll mix. That's fine if that's what you're going for, but I wasn't, so I had to be careful. I recorded these first few on my old digital camera, which is why the picture quality isn't great. It did mean I was able to reference a picture of Motoro on my phone off-screen, though. That's the only reason I'm able to get all these details in. I'm basically just copying his base sprite from Motonui Online Game 2. But that's what practice is for, right? I do really like this no outline look for this piece, with details added in a dark blue. It's different from my usual style, but since I was trying to emulate another style for it, I think it works. And there we have it, my first attempt with Posca pens, as well as my first time drawing a Bionicle character as an actual robot and not a humanized version. Could have gone better, could have gone worse. I think I learned a few things and I still have space on this page, so let's draw something else. For this one, I wanted to try drawing a human character in my usual style, so I went with Cure Sunshine from Heartcatch Precure. I sketched her up and erased the lines like usual, then went in with a Posca. As you can see, I had a rough time deciding what order to do things in. I wanted to do lighter colors first, since it's much easier to cover a lighter color with a darker color than vice versa. And again, I was trying to prevent bleeding as much as possible. I immediately fell in love with the silver pen. Oh my gosh, it's so shimmery and pretty, I love it so much. I'm never using my metallic Sharpies again. With the outlines done, I started filling in, and here's the first part where pilling started becoming a real problem. I'm not sure if it's just because it's a bigger picture, or if Cure Sunshine just has more large blocks of color than Motoro does, but I had to stop a few times to wipe pilled paper off the end of my pens so they wouldn't drag behind and put paint where I didn't want it. That's what you see me doing with the thick yellow one several times. Unfortunately, then I acquired a new problem. See, the paint is opaque, like I said, which means that when I colored in her face, it covered up the sketch showing where I was putting her features, so I had to freehand all that. I definitely started losing patience with this one pretty quickly when it became clear that my usual style wasn't going to work in this medium. There are several minor mistakes that I didn't want to bother going back to fix, and there are some parts where I should have waited longer for the paint to dry before continuing. I had kind of figured this particular piece was a wash and wanted to move on. Instead of little figures like this one, I think it's best to stick to big, bold shapes, at least until I get a better hang of things. With that in mind, let's move on to the next one. This one is using the little square book my roommate gave me. I think it's about 3 inches by 3 inches or so? I'm not sure, I don't know inches and I don't care enough to check. Maybe it's 4, I don't know. In any case, I thought it'd be fun to do my channel logo since it's all big, simple shapes, which is perfect for what I was looking for. I traced the lid of an old jar candle for the circle, sketched in the details, erased it down, and got to work with the pens. Once again, we have a pilling problem, and this paper is much thinner than my usual sketchbook paper, so it also started wrinkling and warping immediately. I also had the brilliant idea to fill the whole thing in with white first to cut down on how much I'd have to go over everything with other colors, as well as give it a nice base. Because white is a lighter color than the light sort of peach color I used for Cure Sunshine's face, I could actually still see my sketch through it, which was good. Unfortunately though, then I had to wait until it was dry to continue, and also white on white means I definitely missed some bits. Pros and cons, that's the name of the game when you're experimenting. Once I got into it though, it was pretty relaxing. There's something to be said for just steadily working away at something. My brilliant strategy with the white base did mean I didn't have to do multiple coats for most colors either, except the yellow, which was only because it had to go over the blue anyway. In the end, I wound up going with 3 coats of yellow, and I probably could have done more. Next time it'd definitely be better to just do yellow over white and not try to make it totally opaque over another color. That's best left to darker colors like orange and purple. You can see I tried to pick off some of the dried pilling. It kind of worked, not really though. And there we have it. Like I said, pilling and warping were the main problems for this one, which was the fault of the paper. Other than that, I think it turned out well. And then I couldn't think of what to do for the next one, and I didn't work on it again for 2 months. After my 2-month hiatus, I came back to the project with the idea to draw one of my all-time favorite Pokemon, Oshawott. I love Oshawott a normal amount, so it was a perfect fit for me. I drew a mock-up in my sketchbook first before putting it on the actual watercolor paper I was using for this one. I figured watercolor paper is meant to have a lot of liquid on it, so warping and pilling wouldn't be a problem, right? Well, in a word, no. There wasn't any more or less pilling than usual, and it actually warped so bad that when it was dry I had to store it under multiple stacked sketchbooks to get it to flatten out again. I'm not sure if that's just because I took it out of the book to work on it and the glue would have helped keep it flat, or if it's because watercolor paper isn't suited to this medium, or if it's just because it's cheap store-brand watercolor paper, but either way it was kind of a pain in the ass. This paper being thicker meant that it needed more coats to be fully opaque too. Honestly, my biggest issue was the yellow, though that was mostly because I didn't erase the sketch under where it was supposed to go as well as I should have. Again, once I got into it, it was sort of meditative, just going back and forth between different colors while I waited for them to dry. This picture took me about an hour from start to finish, but it didn't feel like it did. I wanted to make sure I had a background for this one, even if it was just as simple as this. Partly I just wanted to use my glitter pens, which I'd just gotten that day, but also because this was a slightly fancier paper, I wanted to make sure I used all of it. Unfortunately, the 3Ms are just that much smaller than the 5Ms and aren't totally suited to the giant swaths of color that the 5Ms are good for, so it took a long time and just kind of looks okay. Something to keep in mind in the future, I guess. I decided to outline this one in black, unlike the other ones, and I'm glad I did. It really helps make it look finished. The lineless look with the blue lines inside worked fine for Motoro, but here the black outlines definitely add to it. I'm sure you could use Posca pens to make totally lineless art, but I've never been good at that, so I'm not about to start now. All in all, Oshawott turned out pretty alright. Again, there's some pilling I'm not happy with, but other than that, I think he looks good. I even got the paper mostly flattened out. Honestly, I'm happy with him to the point where I might sell him at a future convention. So the next thing I wanted to try out was the canvas board, and this was another one that I sketched out ahead of time, so I knew mostly what I was doing before I started. I wanted to do something a little more complicated, but also still with big blocks of color like Oshawott and my logo. I've wanted to make Pride art, especially Ace Pride art, for a while now, so I decided now was the time. I went with heart hands because hands are simple shapes but still more challenging than anything else I'd tried so far, and I made it an Aero Ace solidarity piece. One hand has the colors of the aromantic pride flag, the other has the asexual pride flag colors, and the heart in the middle has the Aero Ace flag colors. I got really persnickety with this one because I did intend to put it up for sale from the start, hence why I was measuring it and drawing a straight line down the middle for symmetry. It's not 100% symmetrical, but I think that's fine. If I was drawing this digitally, I'd be more concerned about it, but because it's a traditional medium, I'm not that worried. Maybe it gives it more of an air of authenticity, I don't know. Again, sketching it out on regular paper ahead of time really gave me a better idea of how to go about drawing it and what my composition was going to look like. Highly recommend. Also, my sweet boy Apollo was demanding some attention while I was working on this one, so have a cat cameo. I was thinking about making the background black with silver outlines, but wound up going the other way around because I was worried that the black parts on both hands would just kind of get lost. To be perfectly honest, I kind of wish I'd stuck with the original idea. I think it might have popped a bit better. I picked the slogan, "We're here, we're queer, get used to it," because it's an old slogan with a lot of history, and also A-spec people are often excluded from queer spaces. We're questioned if we're queer enough, told we don't count if we're also cis-het, judged harshly if we're in any kind of relationship, told that celibacy or not being able to get a date don't qualify as sexualities, our experiences are mocked and belittled. And again, while not exclusively from other queers, it perhaps hurts worse when it's someone who should be on your side holding the knife. I also chose to do aro-ace solidarity specifically because aros often also get this from aces as well. Well-meaning aces will say things like, "Oh, but we can still fall in love, we're still normal," which is a horrible way of throwing our aro siblings under the bus. Or worse, they'll say things about aros that ace exclusionists say about us, calling them broken or weird or saying they're making it up or faking it for attention. That's fucking horrible. No one should be left out or left behind. We're here, we're queer, get used to it. Alright, I'm getting down off my soapbox. This is just important to me as an asexual. Thank you for understanding. Anyway. This is probably my favorite of all the ones I did for this video. I think I probably should have gone over the background again once it dried because you can see those streak lines that I don't like, but otherwise I think it looks really good. I'm probably biased because this is the one that's most personal, but I did genuinely have a good time making it. This one took me a little over 2 hours, and unlike the Oshawott one, I definitely felt that, but it felt really good to work on, and I'm happy with the final product. For this last one, I didn't really have any specific picture in mind. I work at a clothing store right now, and one of the things we have in at the moment is a black bathing suit with brightly colored flowers on it. So I decided to just do some fun little shapes and experiment with the black paper, seeing how it looked. I love the look of bright, bold colors on a black background. I think that darkness really makes the colors pop, so I was excited to try this one. The results were mixed. It felt like it took more layers of paint to get the colors as opaque as usual, which I guess is to be expected, honestly. Darker colors like purple don't stand out as well, which, fair, but still. I also got impatient with waiting for stuff to dry and messed things up a bunch, and generally just didn't have as good a time with it as I'd hoped. Also, it had been a couple weeks between filling this one and finishing the last one, so I really had to shake the pens up again. Not a problem, just an observation. I doodled some strawberries because I've been working on a paper doll version of my strawberry elf character that I drew a few years back, so I have strawberries on the brain. I also did flowers like the ones that had inspired me, and a sun, and some more little things. I wanted to test out my metallic and glitter pens on the black paper too. It was so weird. The thicker gold pen has a completely different look to it than the thin one, and its color is different on the black paper than my white test piece. Silver looks the same on both and in both thicknesses, but gold is different. They're the same color, so I'm not sure what's up there. The glitter pens didn't seem like they'd worked very well when I first tried them, but after they'd dried, they looked much better. Also, I randomly decided to get out the brown pen because I suddenly realized I'd never actually used that color for anything and wanted to give it a shot to see how it looked. I found also that thin lines stand out way less on black than they do on white. You've got to really go over them a couple times to make them look good. Maybe I just didn't prep the pens enough for those ones, I don't know. The black paper experiment wasn't a total failure, and to be honest, a lot of the problems I had were self-inflicted. I didn't give the strawberries enough time to dry, so putting the leaves and stems on them went badly. Same with the blue flower and the yellow centers of both flowers. They needed more time to dry, and I was just so impatient with the whole thing by then that I didn't let them. So that's my own fault. Honestly though, I do still really like the bright colors on a black background. I think if I approached it with more patience next time, it'd be fine. I wonder if you can get black canvas boards. Or I could just paint one black before I start, that'd be cool. Oh, also this paper warped and pilled like the rest of them. None were as bad as that little square book though, that one was the worst for it. All in all, I really liked using the paint pens. Like I've said, I love the bold colors and the neat ways they've made me push my art. I look forward to making more art with them soon. Again, if you have any ideas for that, hit me up in the comments, I'm always looking for new ideas. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and I hope to see you again in a new video sooner than it took for this one to come out. Bye!